guys? This is Solid Shepard bringing you another video. And in this episode, we're going to be covering Game Informer's latest issue and what they had to say about Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Something that the really interesting thing on that first page that I got, there wasn't really much. It was kind of just an injecture. I think I probably just made up a word there. But anyways, it's stuff we already knew. But there was one thing on there that Anuma I thought was interesting that he said that they decided to go open world due to Skyward Sword's failure. I mean, that's not a quote unquote, but that's the gist of what he said, is that they understood that people were frustrated with the way Skyward Sword worked because they kind of created these nice little areas, but they were all compartmentalized. Like, they were small little world spaces that they made you go into. And it wasn't like an open world game that, you know, most gamers want nowadays, especially on a story kind of role-playing driven type of game. So I thought that was very, very interesting. Okay, guys, next, the first actual, as far as new stuff that they really covered was the stables. And what they had, basically what they had to say about it, I'm kind of compartmentalizing everything I read into categories to kind of structure this video better. So, as far as the stables go, each is run by a unique named character. So it's not just some random guy like a lot of RPGs. It's going to be more like, you know, Skyrim, how you have the inns or whatever, the pubs, whatever you want to call them, the bars, and you know, you have named characters that are running them. They have their kind of own story. So that's the way these stables are basically working. They're run by a named character, a named character, and they're littered around the world. So there's going to be a lot of these things. So they're probably going to be the central hubs out in the countryside, which there's a lot of countryside in this game, if what we've seen so far is any indication. So obviously, you know, they're probably not going to replace actual towns that you'll be visiting. But how, you know, we don't know how many towns are going to be. I think we've only really seen concepts and screenshots and stuff of really one town so far. So there's probably not going to be many towns. So these things will be very important. And then obviously they hold, you know, the horses. Once you break horses in, they hold the horses there. And so they're littered around the world. They have beds that you can pay for, giving extra health or golden hearts. Now, in the Game Informer article, they only said they only got one extra heart, so I don't know if that's going to be like that for all of them, or maybe if it's how many how many hearts you have. It's a fraction of however many hearts you have is what you gain there. I don't know, but it gives you extra health initially. But when you lose that health, you can't get it back. The only way you can get it back is to go to another stable and pay for and sleep in another bed. So I don't know how dependable that little perk will really be, but it is there. It is a thing. And then Beetle, of course. You're going to have Beetle there, who will basically work as the guy you will sell your loot to, basically. So if you have weapons and armor or stuff that you don't really use, and you don't really plan on using, or, you know, duplicates or what have you, you should probably, you know, I'm assuming you'll be able to sell it to him for rubies, and he might have some items that you can use your rubies on to buy also. He's going to be he should be like the main shop, basically. And I'm assuming he's just going to conveniently show up to whichever stable you're at, because that's just the way these kind of things work in video games. So there's that. But then they kind of segued from the stables to the weather, because it was like a lightning and rainstorm happened, apparently, while the editor at Game Informer was playing. And he made a few observations. It uniquely affects NPCs. So he said, like, when it started raining, all the NPCs immediately made a mad dash for the stables to try and get under cover. He said Beetle himself was, like, covering his head and trying to keep his head from getting wet as he was running in. So that's really cool, really fun little details right there. And then he also said, like, this has to do with the stables, is whenever you're trying to break in a horse, you got to sneak up on him first. And he said later on, whenever he was trying to do this, he had to create an elixir that, like, quieted his footsteps, I guess. But there is an option to just do it when it rains. And it sounds like it just started raining outside in real life, so that's really weird. But anyways, I don't know if you guys can hear it. But anyways, the rain will actually cover up your footsteps a little bit, so you won't have to take that elixir to sneak up on enemies or sneak up on horses. So that's very interesting. Like, the weather, your environment, is actually dynamically affecting what you do and the way you play the game. Lightning. It will target Link if he has any kind of metal equipped. So if he's wearing that metal armor that we saw, he'll get struck by lightning. If he has a metal sword or axe or anything like that, or shield, he will, in fact, get struck by lightning. And something that is to note that Game Informer said is it wasn't insta-death. It kills you instantly. It's instant-death. So you gotta watch out for that. You can't you gotta equip like a wooden club or something while it's thunderstorming outside, unless you want to die, basically. So then the next weather thing would be cold weather. It can be combated with like cold weather clothing, so heavy clothing, and spicy foods, strangely enough. I would assume it's like a buff, and it will have a timer probably. There'll probably be a certain amount of time it lasts, but if you eat spicy foods, it'll help warm you up along with the clothes. And then also, certain loot that enemies drop, like if you kill a wolf, like, they'll drop meat usually, but the meat will actually become frozen in the colder environments, which I think is very interesting. Which I think there's probably I think I heard before, like way back, food spoils eventually in this game if you don't use it, but being in a cold environment, that'll actually help preserve the meat because it'll be frozen. So that's actually a really, really cool little gameplay detail that really will probably end up mattering and making all the difference in the world whenever the time comes. And that's about all it for the stables and the weather. Okay, so another thing that Anuma said was, quote, this one is a quote, "I wanted to create a world where users could have fun dying." So that's pretty interesting there. So he wants players to decide when to take on Calamity Ganon. So that's one thing he's talking about, is you can go to the end boss, Calamity Ganon, at any point. Like, the second you have control of Link, you can make a beeline for Hyrule Castle. I assume that's actually after the Great Plateau, after the opening, because you have to have the little tutorial section. But after that, you can go straight for Calamity Ganon. But he says you'll probably die because you're just not ready for him yet. So it's up to you to decide when you think you've, sufficiently gotten enough equipment and you're strong enough and you're good enough at the game and all that to try and take on the final boss. And he also said certain areas will be leveled. He didn't use the word leveled, but I'm using the word leveled. Because it is a Zelda game, and I don't think there's going to be like, your traditional RPG level system where you're going to be like, a level 20 and a level 30 zone. Like, I don't think that's going to be the case. But they are going to be scaled. So, like, some areas you're going to, the whole thought process is you're supposed to be better equipped to really tackle them. And some other areas will just be easy and you don't really need any equipment at all. So, basically, the whole thought process behind that is you will run across these areas you're just not ready for, and you have to go away and go back to an easier area, try and build your stuff up basically until you're better equipped to tackle that, and you can come back and do that. So that's basically what he's getting at there. Which a lot of role-playing type games do that and have been doing that for a while. So it only makes sense to go that route. And then of course that kind of segues perfectly into exploration. Shrines work as mini dungeons. They also work for fast travel and like map unlockers. So as far as the map goes, they work like the towers. The towers do in Assassin's Creed. So like you'll climb the tower, get the whole bird's eye view, and it'll unlock a part of your map. It doesn't work exactly like that, but you put your Sheikah tablet on there, and then it unlocks whatever part of the map it's responsible for. It also works as fast travel, so once you unlock one, it's similar to like when you discover a new location in the Elder Scrolls games. You know how you can just select a fast travel after that? It works the same way. As that. Think of the shrines as locations. You should just be able to fast travel. I assume that's how it's working anyways. They might decide to do a thing where you have to craft something to fast travel, to use an item that you crafted to fast travel. That's completely a possibility too, but they work as fast travel points for however they decide to do that system. And of course the mini dungeons, we already knew that. That's not new information. Cliffs and caverns can be dropped into and explored. There aren't really any invisible walls in this game, so unlike in Twilight Princess, when you see the opening scene, that big cavern, we all know you can't jump down there, or can you? I haven't tried doing that since the GameCube. I don't remember if you could or not, but if you could, you definitely died when you did. But you can actually glide, use your sailcloth and glide down into caverns and things like that, and every inch of this world is explorable. So that's really, really cool. And then the stamina meter really is a big part of exploration, because you have it to climb up things, and the length of time you can hold onto your sailcloth and all that. Nintendo didn't reveal how it could be done, but they said you will in game be able to upgrade it over time. So you will be able to make that stamina meter better and better, so you can explore more and more of the world. Alright guys, now we're going to get into the thing that most people of these kinds of games really care about, like myself, and that's the combat. Some enemies can hide for an ambush, so the writer of the article in Game Informer, I think it was their editor that was actually doing it, said like when he was in the snowy region after he had put on the cold region clothes and ate the spicy food, as he explored a little bit, and he said that this Lizalfos, I always butcher their names, the giant lizard dudes with the swords and crap, he said like they popped out of the snow. There was one that popped out of the snow and he got in a fight with it, and then another one popped up and then he was screwed and he basically died. Like there was nothing he could do. That's very interesting, because that means there's going to be more elements than you see randomly spawning enemies in this area and you can decide whether to fight them or not. No, like in the older Zelda games. No, that's not the case. They kind of have their own unique plans, and sometimes they'll ambush you, sometimes they'll hide. And, it creates a whole other facet to the game and your strategy, because you need to be wary that there could be danger lurking around any corner and you can't necessarily see it all the time. And then, they also said, along with the Lizalfos, some enemy attacks do much more damage than the previous Zelda titles. They said that the Lizalfos that I just mentioned, like, when they hit him, I think he said he lost, like 5 or 6 hearts? Like, that's a lot of health. He lost a lot of health. Like, if you're just starting off and I assume you're going to have 3, 4, maybe 5 hearts, whatever it is, that's like a one-shot. That would one-shot, you when you start the game, pretty much. That's insane. Because usually the Lizalfos in past games only did like half a heart of damage, maybe a full heart. Like the more elite Lizalfos would do more. But yeah, I think the most hearts I ever saw an enemy really do damage to you for. I didn't really play Skyward. I played Skyward Sword, but I haven't played it that much because I didn't really like the Wii controls, the nunchuck controls for it. But all the other games before that, like I think the biggest you would lose with any enemy was like 3 or maybe 4 hearts. So that's crazy. Like this regular enemy in the world, can do more than some of the mini bosses and the bosses of the other games. That's crazy. But then they also went on to say, like, once they came back, they were like, okay, maybe fire arrows will work. And apparently the fire arrows obliterated these guys. So a little bit of the Pokemon sprinkled in here, I guess. Element elemental advantages and disadvantages are a thing in this game that can either be exploited and taken advantage of or used against you. So that's rather interesting. So they're adding a level of deepness there. Every weapon, from the pitchfork to the mop, yes, you can use a mop apparently as a weapon, to the clubs, to the swords, they all work uniquely. They all have their own unique animations, their own unique speed that they work, their own unique way that you effectively use them. So, that's very interesting. Swords obviously are going to slash. The pitchfork, you're probably going to stab. The mop, I guess you're going to try and bludgeon it with the mop in as much as possible. I don't know how that's going to work. Probably not going to be the best at weapon, but I guess I could see it, in a pinch. Crafting is a thing. They didn't really get to touch on the crafting in their 3 hours that Nintendo gave them with the game, but they said you can collect minerals and stuff like that and use it to craft all sorts of manner of things. So there's another little element there. And I was about to say, from Skyrim and The Witcher and stuff. And it's very interesting because I didn't really write this down in my stuff, but I really wanted to bring this up. Anuma said, they wrote down that Anuma said he didn't used to play other video games. He usually basically just developed for Nintendo, but he stopped that apparently in recent years, and he started playing games like The Witcher 3 and Skyrim and stuff like that. He said he didn't play Grand Theft Auto because he doesn't like violence, even though there's plenty of violence in Skyrim and The Witcher. But I guess it's it's more structured violence than just do whatever the heck you want. It's not always the best thing in the world of Grand Theft Auto. But he said it didn't really necessarily directly impact anything he did in the game, but it was always there in the back of his head, when they were discussing ideas and stuff. So it had to factor somewhat, and I feel like this is one area it had to have. It was the crafting. He probably thought that was a real cool element that could probably go really well in a Zelda game. All weapons are breakable, which makes a lot of us in the community, a little worried, because what about the Master Sword? Because they said every weapon. He said there's no weapon that's indestructible. Which, I guess they kind of said the same thing when Skyward Sword came out. And it was true until you got the Hero's Shield. Then that one was indestructible. So maybe they're going to do kind of a similar thing with the Master Sword in this game, and that will be the only one, or they just want to lead us off the path. But at the same time, they legitimately said there's no unbreakable weapons in the game. Unless maybe the Master Sword just has way more durability than any of the other weapons, but perhaps it can still break. Or maybe, whereas other weapons will completely break, the Master Sword will just deteriorate, right? So maybe it will get to a point where when it quote-unquote breaks, it will just be in that rusted form that we've seen on the title of the game and all that, but you can just repair it somehow and then it'll be good to go again. You won't just lose it like the other weapons, but it would still quote-unquote break. Maybe that's what's going to happen with the Master Sword. We'll see. I might do a separate video on that. Anyways, where was I? The Guardians are insanely powerful. Now, they detailed their fight against the Guardians, and holy cow, from what they said, they did a bomb arrow and all kind of other crazy stuff, and they still barely put a dent into its health, and then it just one-shotted them. That's crazy. And then they said they decided to change up their strategy eventually and go to a ramparts of some ruins or something like that and try and target it from afar, but it eventually caught on, and they were only able to get a quarter of its health or something like that down before it destroyed what they were hiding behind and then killed them again. So I don't know if it's just one of them things where Nintendo placed them in to an area they weren't ready for yet, or if the Guardians are just legitly all that insanely powerful. That's just crazy. That is legit crazy. Okay, now we're going to be getting into the dungeon. And according to Game Informer, in their article, the dungeon that they dropped them in was called the Dungeon of the Wild. And I almost wonder if they meant to say the Dungeon of the Wind, which we'll get to in the last thing that I talk about, which is the next thing we're going to talk about. But anyways, whether it's a typo or not, they called it the Dungeon of the Wind. So that's all we have to go on right now. Just a couple little footnotes here. Is they said that you must use the slate to move the dungeon to advance. And basically what they mean by that is there's going to be little nooks, crannies, little angles that you need to use the glider to glide through some kind of shaft or something, or an opening on the other side of walls. And blocks will move also to and fro. Kind of like in older Zelda, some dungeons actually kind of utilize this a little bit, where blocks would move, be blocking the door, and you'd have to move, like tilt the dungeon to move it, all kind of things like that to advance. So I thought that was very interesting. Like, you'll have to actually manipulate the dungeon itself in order to advance through it. These are the main dungeons, and that's the other thing, is these are moving dungeons. As we all already know, if you don't, and you just want to stay completely spoiler free, thank you for watching. You should probably leave the video now. I mean, it's nothing game breaking, but you know, it's nothing that's gonna ruin the game for you. It's no really like story element spoilers, but it is some kind of spoilers that has to do with the main dungeons themselves. Anyways, you've been warned. So they're moving dungeons. So the tapestry that they released, that they had Reggie Fils-Aimé holding up, it had like 4 giant animals, and as we know, these are like giant animatronics that the Sheikah made basically to combat Calamity Ganon, but Calamity Ganon corrupted them, and now they're working against us. And I mean, it's not verified, but it's pretty obvious that the whole point of them is to liberate them so that they're not working for Ganon anymore and they can work for us again. That's pretty much the extent of it. But you go inside these giant things, kind of, you know, what? I'm drawing a blank on that name right now. Shadow of the Colossus, kind of like Shadow of the Colossus, but you actually go inside it once you climb up it. And yeah, so basically, you're gonna go in there. You know, they're roaming the world. They're roaming certain areas of the world each, and you got to try and get rid of all the gunk, all the evil stuff. And the gunk can hurt you, so you don't want to touch it. But you get rid of all the gunk, and then you fight a boss, and then you try to liberate it. But you gotta traverse the dungeon and kill all the gunk first before you can get to that final, you know, quote-unquote boss room. But it's really just the top of the animatronic. I'm calling it animatronic because I really don't know what else to call it. They did note while they were in the Dungeon of the Wild that a friendly voice spoke to them once they first put the Sheikah tablet into the kiosk, or whatever you want to call it, inside the dungeon to move it. And I kind of, on my little script here, my little footnotes that I'm using to make this video, I put friendly in quotations, because we don't know who this voice is. We have no idea who it is. It could actually be friendly, or it could be an enemy. It could, for all we know, be Ganondorf trying to manipulate us. Because a lot of people did say that in Twilight Princess, the little stone mural, or whatever you want to call it, that was a quote-unquote hint that people said for this game, which it did have Link. It did have a Goron that looks a lot like the Goron in this game. And it did have a Rito, which the Rito are confirmed to be in the game. There was also a man, and a lot of people said that man looked a lot like Ganondorf. So it could just be Ganondorf. And you say Calamity Ganon, it's not Ganondorf, it's Calamity Ganon. Well, we don't know. Maybe Calamity Ganon is just the vibrations of Ganondorf's power, or maybe he's gotten so much power that his power is overflowing and he can't hold it all in him. So Calamity Ganon, like, emanates from wherever he's at, wherever he's standing. You know, it could just be that. Or, for all we know, Ganon and Ganondorf could have split somehow, and Ganondorf is, you know, behind the scenes doing some other stuff. We don't know. But we also don't know who this voice is. It seems to be friendly, but anyone who's played video games for any amount of time, especially someone who's as big of a fan of Hideo Kojima games as I am, would know that things aren't always as they seem. So we can't just take it at face value. It could be friendly, it could just be friendly, and I could just be overthinking things, but it could also be not friendly. But I just thought it was interesting that they, like, Nintendo didn't literally let them know who this was, but they just were like, friendly. Or at least it seems friendly. Anyways, one other thing of note, something I really don't like about the dungeons now is the chests are not special. The chests are no more special than the other chests you find around the world. There's no more Zelda jingle and then he holds up an amazing new item. Those moments that to me I grew up on and really made me fall in love with Zelda are no longer seen to be part of the franchise, because the two major games they made, the last one the handheld, and then now this one, finding items in dungeons were not a thing. And that really kind of sucks. But hopefully the other new elements that are amazing that they're introducing in Breath of the Wild will make up for it. But it is kind of sad that there is no more, unique items found in dungeons. That does kind of suck a little bit. Okay, now on to Wind Blight Ganon, the boss of this temple or dungeon or wherever you want to call it, animatronic. So apparently at the end, Link pulls out his paraglider. I guess there's some kind of air floating him up to the top, and he's like on the top of this thing, and Wind Blight Ganon comes out, is the boss. Apparently it's the manifestation of the corruption and evil of Ganondorf that was put into this machine. And I don't know if you I would assume if you destroy all four of these in the world, then Calamity Ganon's power would decrease, or maybe Calamity Ganon would disappear and it would just leave Ganondorf, like I said, and then the final boss fight would be you versus Ganondorf, which is, slightly more manageable. Maybe because they did say that there would be an alternate ending. Inuma did say that there'd be an alternate ending to the game, so maybe that alternate ending will depend on whether you face off against Calamity Ganon or if you face off against Ganondorf. I mean, that's a thought. I'm not saying that's what it's going to be. That's just me kind of spitballing right now. But anyways, so you'll fight Wind Blight Ganon. He uses, they explained it as spike projectiles, like spike-like projectiles. And he can also, because he is Wind Blight Ganon, he can also conjure tornadoes. And those are his two main weapons against you. And apparently he does not have a face. So it's not like Phantom Ganon, where it's like he looks just like Ganon. He really... I'm going to have the picture up right now in the video itself. He really looks nothing like Ganon. I think it's just because it's a part of Calamity Ganon is the reason why it's called Ganon. But it's called Blight Ganon. Wind Blight Ganon. Okay, so there's no special strategy to beating these bosses apparently. It's just kind of whatever works. In the past, there was like very specific ways you did it. Like Goma inside the Great Deku Tree. You shot her in the eyeball off a slingshot, and then you slashed her up a bit. You do that 3 times and you win. Valoo in the Wind Waker, you use the grappling hook and you swing on Valoo so he knocks down on Goma, and you do that until Goma's shell breaks. And then you do it again to bring her eye down, and you slash her eye a few times and you win. Like, there's always been, specific ways to beat these bosses that you had to do, but that's no longer the case apparently. It's just like finding any kind of boss in any other kind of modern day RPG. There are, there's usually ways they plan in, like, 2 or 3 best ways to defeat a boss, but those aren't necessarily going to be the only ways. So that's really awesome. They're going to have a normal health bar, it seems, instead of just, hit the eyeball or this body part a certain amount of times and you win. So that's really cool. And the last thing that I really want to talk about is they kind of touched on, the Wii U versus the Switch. What's the differences? So apparently, Inuma said there's really not going to be that big of a difference. The Switch version, when docked, will have a better resolution. So it will be a little bit less than like 1080, right? So it'll be pretty much full HD. And, the Wii U will not be. The Switch will, the Wii U will not be. And when docked, the Switch will have better loading times. But the way this game looks, it doesn't seem like there's going to be a whole lot of loading times. So that's not really that big of a deal. Like, really neither one is. I mean, 720p is still really good looking. So, and they both still have the same frame rate. So there's really not that big of a difference. So if you already have a Wii U and you're not looking to buy a Switch, at least not until it proves that it'll have an actual game library this time around, I would just stick with the Wii U version for now if I was you guys, because there's really not that big of a difference. Unless you just really love Nintendo and you really want to support Nintendo and you have the money to spend, and go ahead and buy a Switch for the game. But otherwise, I would just keep the Wii U, or if you don't have a Wii U, they're pretty cheap now. Just go out and buy one, pick one up at GameStop, a used one at GameStop or something, and then buy the Wii U version. Anyways, that's it for the video, guys. Let me know what you thought or what you think, and any of these discussion points that Game Informer has brought forth for us. Feel free to discuss them, or ask me, or ask each other, or just state your thoughts in the comment section. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and until next time, this has been Solid Shepard, and I should go.